I actually bought an iPhone 14 Pro with my own money, but I was so unimpressed with the total experience that I returned it. And even though I had already sold my 13 mini, I missed it so much I bought another one. I'll walk you through what attracted me to the iPhone 14 Pro, what was totally wrong about it, and why I've gone backwards in the Apple lineup. And I'm totally happy that I did. If that interests you, you're in the right place for me to tell you more. So I experienced massively mixed feelings when Apple unveiled its iPhone 14 range. I mean, maybe you'll know from another video of mine that I predicted that Apple would axe the iPhone mini, but it was still crashingly disappointing when they actually did it. But the writing had been on the wall for the iPhone mini for the last year or so. Estimated sales of the smaller iPhone were, well, small compared to that of the regular sized iPhone or Pro models. And it appears that Apple took that as an indication that it should go in the opposite direction and offer a bigger, cheaper iPhone. So anyway, when Apple unveiled the iPhone 14 Plus, and it became really true that there was no iPhone 14 mini coming, I looked at my iPhone 13 mini and thought, you've had a good run, buddy. While I love my mini, I'm also someone who loves the latest and greatest technology, but most of all, I miss the telephoto camera. And what with the new 3x telephoto camera and the 4K cinematic mode, this was enough to put the iPhone 14 Pro regular size phone in my sights. And then a mobile carrier in New Zealand was offering a sweet deal on trading in my iPhone 11 Pro Max, as well as a good second-hand price I could get on my 13 mini. So now that the maths added up to lay out for a new phone, I decided it was time to let go, embrace the future, and go back to the world of bigger phones. Now, does that sound like you? Did you lay out for an iPhone 14 Pro? Let me know in the comments how it went for you. Me, I ordered the iPhone 14 Pro 512GB version in white, and luckily in a nationwide shortage of iPhone 14 Pros, I found one in stock close by, but after just 1 week, I returned it and kept my iPhone 13 mini. And to be honest, I'd made up my mind on just day one. Here's why. When I first purchased the iPhone 13 mini, I was surprised by its small size. After a few days, however, I realized that it was the perfect size for me. It was just so easy to use with just one hand compared to its family members, especially the Pro models. It's just so much lighter. When I started using it as my daily device, the iPhone 14 Pro, however, was just too large for my liking. And not just large, it was so really very heavy. Now, I've been using my iPhone 11 Pro Max for a couple of weeks as my in-between phone. And though it's not as large, the iPhone 14 Pro just felt heavier, and the balance just didn't feel right. The iPhone 11 Pro Max comes in slightly heavier at 226 grams versus 206 grams of the 14 Pro, but the balance of the 14 Pro just felt all wrong. It constantly felt like it was going to tip over the top of my hand and I was going to drop it. And believe me, it was really noticeable. I wasn't expecting to dislike its size-weight combination as much as I actually did. It doesn't feel enormous like the iPhone 14 Pro Max surely would and did in the shop, but it feels just too big, too unbalanced as a daily phone, and I have reasonably large hands. Going from the iPhone 13 mini to the iPhone 14 Pro feels like you're going from holding a piece of cardboard to a lump of metal. And you kind of are. The iPhone 14 Pro is heavy, not only because of its size, but because of its stainless steel construction. Now, the benefit of a larger display is undeniable. There's something special though about having a compact yet powerful phone. No amount of screen real estate replaces the ability of being able to reach the top of the screen with one hand and the convenience and joy that that brings me. Ridiculous, but important. To me, anyway. Maybe to you too. I'm going to get to the other things that went wrong before I have a think about whether Apple knows what they're doing or not with the current lineup at all. Signs are that they're having second thoughts. There were 3 features that the iPhone 14 Pro had over the 13 mini that stood out to me. The dynamic island, the zoom lens, and the Pro Motion display. But to be honest, I only really cared about the camera. I remember having access to the zoom lens with my iPhone 11 Pro Max and enjoying portrait mode a lot. So I was curious to see if portrait mode on the 14 Pro would be so very much better than the 13 mini that it would get me to switch and stay with it. But for me, it just wasn't the case. I mean, it was obviously better, but not that much better that I would consider it a reason to leave my mini behind. It just didn't look that much better for what I use it for. As for cinematic mode in 4K, especially with the improvements with the selfie cam, this really was the only thing I would have kept the iPhone 14 Pro. It's just amazing. But like I said, it felt like I was going to drop it all the time when I was using it with one hand. And using it with two hands all the time was not a sacrifice I was willing to make. Now, as soon as I transferred over to the iPhone 14 Pro, something went wrong with iMessages. I have a feeling that the mobile provider messed up somewhere, and although the retailer tried their best to fix it, I must have spent over 20 hours trying to fix the problem, including a 3-hour chat session with Apple as senior advisors try to figure out what was going on. I don't know about you, but messages in the Apple ecosystem are such an integral part of my life now. I couldn't afford for this not to work properly, both from a business and a personal point of view. It's actually quite shocking to see how dependent I was on it. So because the phone was tied on contract to that provider, I gave them 6 days to sort the problem out, as I had a 7-day return period. They couldn't fix it. So that's another reason why the phone went back. Now, this part is hard to put into facts or figures. It's more of a feeling, a vibe, and aesthetic. There's something about the iPhone 13 mini that makes it fun and an absolute delight to use. The small size, the lightness compared to all other iPhones, the same capabilities as the larger version. Yes, the other iPhones have bigger screens, more battery life, more cameras, and all the other features you could continue to list. It seems crazy that you'd pick the iPhone mini over any other iPhone considering all of these things, but not to me. And I'm suspecting not to a greater number of users who want a smaller device that they perhaps don't spend as much time using. There's something about a fully capable iPhone or a smartphone in general that you can fit in the palm of your hand comfortably. It fits in your pocket without making an unseemly bulge too. It's small, but it's powerful, and that's the sweet spot for me. Now, I've used most iPhones from the original up to the 7, and then a big break when I didn't upgrade at all until the iPhone 11 Pro Max. And after the iPhone 4, the iPhone 13 mini has been my favorite iPhone ever. In fact, it's displaced the iPhone 4, even though that will always have a special place in my heart. So I went out and bought another second-hand iPhone 13 mini, a brand new replacement device for the original owner that was still factory sealed, and it meant that I could get Apple Care on this one too, which was a bonus. And I can't see me changing this device anytime soon, unless Apple does something with the SE. But Apple just released a new iPhone SE in 2022, so all of us iPhone mini lovers might have to wait a long time to wait to see if Apple brings back the mini in the form of the SE perhaps. But as they seem to be focusing the SE on the business and enterprise market, I'm not sure how that happens. Apple has made a big bet on big phones. That has saddened the community of us who has completely fallen in love with our iPhone 12 or 13 mini. They've also pushed people to buy their iPhone 14 and Plus versions, not the Pros, that aren't as different from the 13 lineup. And that apparently is not going down that well. Consumers can smell this and they don't like it. And yeah, I'm not all that surprised. I don't think Apple's strategy is working, and apparently Apple themselves are concerned about the sales of their larger straight iPhone. And although the Apple 15 lineup is almost 100% certainly decided, I wonder if we might see a return to the mini in the Apple 16 lineup, or maybe they'll hit the panic button and we might see a return in the iPhone 15 lineup. Stranger things have happened. Oh, and while you're at it, Apple, stick a better photo engine and zoom lens on it whilst you're doing this, without changing the weight and balance. Solve that little equation, why don't you? What do you think? Does Apple have a clue what they're doing here? Drop me a comment below. Until then, check out this next video, and long live the Mini.